Hey everyone, welcome to the Fractions, Decimals, and Percents guided notes. Let's get started. Where have you seen percents used in the world around you? I'm going to jot some ideas and you can jot down your own as well. I see percents in things like grades, battery power, sales, like maybe it will say 25% off, or taxes. If we break up the word percent into two words, per and cent, we can see that this actually means per 100. Percent is a ratio that compares any number to 100. It asks us to shade 30% of the square below, this square right here. We can see that the large square is broken up into, and there are 100 smaller squares, and I can figure that out by going 10 times 10. The whole square would be 100%. One square would be 1%. So 30% would be 30 squares. As a ratio, this can be written as 30 out of 100. So let's take a second and shade 30% of this square by shading 30 squares. 30% equals 30 out of 100. Shade 64% of this square. How many squares will be shaded? Well, same idea. If each square is 1%, then we are going to shade 64 squares. What percent of the whole will not be shaded? Well, if there are 100 squares and 64 are shaded, then that means 36% are not shaded. And then it says 64% equals 64 out of 100. What percent of the whole is shaded? So looking at this square right here, we have 13 squares shaded. So that would be 13%. Write this number as a percent and a ratio. So 13% is the same as 13 hundredths. Now looking at this square, if the whole square represents a whole, then each section represents, and if we count them, we have 10 sections. So that means each section must represent 10%. Now it asks us to shade 70% of the whole. So if each section is 10%, then I'm going to shade 7 sections. What percent is not shaded? Well, if 100% is the whole minus 70% is what's shaded, then 30% is not shaded. 70% equals 70 out of 100. What percent of this whole is shaded? Well, we have 10 sections, so each section's 10%, and there's 6 sections shaded, so that would be 60%. Write this number as a percent and a ratio. So 60% is going to be 60 out of 100. If the whole rectangle represents a whole, then each section represents, so looking at this section right here, it looks like there are 5 sections. So if I take 100 and divide it by 5, I'm going to get 20. So each section is 20%. Shade 40% of the whole. So if each section is 20, then I'm going to shade 2 sections, 20%, 40%. What percent is not shaded? So if 100 is my whole, 40% is shaded, that leaves me with 60% that is not shaded. A whole rectangle represents 100%. What percent is shaded? So looking at here, I have 100% plus, this is going to be 20 because 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So I have 120%. Explain how you determine this. One whole rectangle is 100% plus 20% of the next rectangle equals 120%. A whole rectangle represents 100%. Shade 250%. So if we want 250, we're going to have 100% plus 100% plus 50%. What percent is not shaded? Well, that just leaves this section right here, which represents 50% of this whole, so 50%. Practice. Answer the following questions. Shade 27% of the whole. Looks like here I have 100 squares, so each one is 1%, so I'm going to shade 27 squares. Write 27% as a ratio. That will be 27 out of 100. What percent is not shaded? If 100 is my whole, I'm going to minus 27, and that leaves me with 73%. This question asks me what percent is shaded. So here's my whole at 100. It is divided into 10 sections, so that must mean each section is 10%. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. Write this as a ratio. That will be 90 out of 100. What percent is not shaded? Well, I have one bar that is not shaded, so that would be 10%. The whole rectangle represents 100%. What percent is each section? So if this is 100, I have 4 sections. So that must mean 100 divided by 4 is 25. So each section is 25%. Shade 75% of the whole. Well, if each section is 25%, then I'm going to shade 3 sections, because 25 times 3 will give me 75. Write 75% as a ratio. That will be 75 out of 100. A whole rectangle represents 100%. What percent is shaded? So I have 100% here, and on the bottom each section is 20% because there's 5. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So that must mean 60% on the bottom is shaded. So together that would be 160%. And I have two 20% sections that are not shaded, so that would be 40%. We are now going to write the numbers as fractions, decimals, and percents. Look at the shaded region. Write this number as a percent. So I have 100 sections, each section's 1, and it looks like 17 sections are shaded. So that would be 17%. Percents can be written as fractions with the whole, meaning the denominator, being 100. So 17% as a fraction is going to be 17 over 100. The number 17 hundredths can be written just as it is said. So if I were to write the number 17 hundredths, I'm going to write 0.17. We say 17 hundredths because the 1 would be in the tenths and then the 7 would be in the hundredths. So it's 17 hundredths. Write the shaded region as a percent, fraction, and decimal. So there are 10 sections, so each section must be 10%. So the shaded region would be 80%. As a fraction, that's going to be 80 out of 100. To reduce a fraction, I can divide the numerator and the denominator by 20. So 80 over 100 will reduce to 4/5. The number 80 hundredths can be written just as it is said. So remember, 80 hundredths would be 0.80 because this is the tenth and this is the hundredth. So we would write 80 hundredths. Write the shaded region as a percent, fraction, and decimal. So I have 5 sections. That must mean each section is 20%. So 2 sections would be 40%. You can change your percent to a fraction with the whole as 100. Or you can notice that 2 out of 5 sections are shaded. So as a fraction, I could write 40 out of 100 and reduce that. That's always an option. Or just looking at this like a barred model, that's 2/5. Create an equivalent fraction with your decimal so the whole is a factor of 10. So if I did 40 100ths, I could just realize that that would be 40 hundredths. But if I did 2/5 and I don't know how to write that as a decimal, I can change it so my denominator is a factor of 10. And so if I multiply by 2, I multiply the top by 2, and that gives me 4. So now it says 4/10. So I could write 4/10. And 40 hundredths and 4/10 are the same number. Write the shaded region as a percent, a fraction, and decimal. So here's my whole. That must mean each side is 50%. So the shaded part is 50%. So I could write 50 out of 100, or looking at that as a bar model, I can notice that is 1/2. So 50 hundredths as a decimal is 0.50, or you may also see it as 0.5, 5/10. Write the shaded areas as a fraction, decimal, and percent. So looking at this first one, this is where each little square is 1%, and there are 33 squares shaded, so that would be 33%. 33% as a fraction will be 33 out of 100. As a decimal, I would say this number right here as 33 hundredths. So I'm going to write 33 hundredths. This question right here, we have 10 sections, so each section is 10%. So that would be 20% shaded. As a fraction, that's 20 out of 100, or that will also reduce to 1/5. This number right here, I would say 20 hundredths. So I'm going to write 20 hundredths, or that is the same as 2 tenths. This question right here, there are 4 sections, so that must mean each section is 25% because 100 divided by 4 is 25. One section is shaded, so that's 25%. As a fraction, that would be 25 out of 100, or I could write that as 1/4. 25 hundredths, I'm going to write 25 hundredths. This question right here, there are 5 sections, so each section must be 20. So I have 20, 40, 60% shaded. As a fraction, that's 60 out of 100, or looking at that, you could say 3/5. 60 out of 100, I would say 60 hundredths. So I could write 60 hundredths, which is the same as 6 tenths. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you.